Live?
Hello everyone, welcome back to our Wednesday night beer tastings. This is beer tasting number 40, which is a crazy landmark for us. I'm joined tonight by Rupert Manguel from Annex Brewing. A little bit of history about the Annex tasting. We did do an Annex event in the height of summer last year, but we were really busy. Annex was busy. We couldn't quite put together a special guest at the time. But just like with the East Coast versus West Coast IPAs, it's always been kind of in the back of my mind bugging me that we needed to go back and do Annex again and do it better. So thank you very much for joining us, Rupert. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I think for the folks at home, we're all going to crack our can of good authority here and get started on that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Annex and the history of Annex and your own history with the beer industry and with your current employer, Annex Brewing?
For sure. So I've actually only been with Annex for about 4 months now. Up until that point, I was the beverage manager with the Ship and Anchor in Calgary.
Okay.
So for those that don't know, the Ship and Anchor is kind of considered a Calgary institution. It's been around for 30 years. I had been working there for 9 years before I took up the opportunity to work with Annex. Annex has been around since, I guess they were established in 2015, but spent, I think, almost 2 years waiting for their brewery license. Mm-hmm. In that time, they started making craft soda to pass the time, which is another side business. Annex was founded by Andrew Bullied and Erica O'Gorman. It's a West Coast inspired brewery. Everything that we do tends to be very hop forward, especially as we're known for our IPAs and our sours. Trying to think what else would be of interest.
I mean, this has unofficially become like the IPAs and sours channel. I'm very excited whenever we have something that's not an IPA or a sour because it's getting a little out of hand.
No, for sure. And it's kind of funny that, one of the beers that we chose to do this evening is really out of the Annex wheelhouse, but trying to do something different is always kind of fun too.
I think that's why I wanted to do this, was largely because the Retracted Resolutions was so different from what I usually see from Annex, and I really wanted to taste it with people. And, any chance I have to pour forward progress. Like, one of my big surprises this year is just, I think I've had the forward progress, and I'm sure Craig or Eric will correct me here, but I think we've had forward progress on 3 times or maybe 4. This might be our 4th. And I always kind of hold up as like, this is a really great example of a pale ale. And then we talk about pale ales and then we move on. But yeah, it's anytime I get to pour forward progress, it's a good tasting for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Definitely one of my favorite beers, and looking forward to having one with you guys tonight.
Awesome. Well, that's not what's in our glasses at the minute. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Good Authority? Because again, not a super hoppy IPA either.
No, it's probably something that the brewers never thought that they would make, especially not something that they thought would probably end up as a core beer. It's 4.9%, so much lighter than a lot of the things that Annex does. It's crisp. You get like bright citrus, maybe like a little hint of mandarin. It's dry hop with
Mandarin's a good call. Yeah,
it's dry hop with Citra and Amarillo, so that's kind of maybe where the mandarin comes from. It's clear, however, it's not filtered, which is pretty interesting. And it's basically, I think, just like something that the brewers wanted to have at the end of the day. You can't drink IPAs all the time. So I think that's kind of how it came about. It's the way that we like to describe it as well is that it's sort of like a gateway craft beer, something that, like, if you had buddies who wanted to come over for a beer but they only drink Budweiser, maybe you'd buy a 4-pack of this and kind of split the difference.
I don't know, how is it? I know you've only been there 4 months, so it's not like you've had a lot of people around the tap room with COVID and everything, but to me, I don't know, I've tasted a lot of beers kind of in this style. And actually, one of the big changes to myself over doing these for 40 bloody weeks now, is I've come to appreciate some of the lager styles and some of the softer styles like Hellas a lot more, including styles like this. And I gotta say, this is maybe a little more characterful than I expect for a gateway beer. This has got a lot going on to it.
It's the Annex gateway, I suppose. Yeah, it does have quite a bit going on, but it is the closest thing that we do to a lager. You guys kind of touched on this last week, actually, with beer trends and what have you. And I think lagers are definitely something that you're going to see more of coming out of craft breweries. Low ABV beers, for sure. But yeah, people are finding interesting things to do with lagers, finding those forgotten styles. And yeah, interesting lager processes, I suppose.
Has Annex ever made a lager, like something in like a German-style darker lager or something, like a Schwarzbier, or?
Funnily enough, they did a sort of like a Ship and Anchor exclusive right at the end of my days there. That was a Munich Dunkel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was the ship shape, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
We actually got a little tiny bit of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, there are some lagers that kind of pop up every now and again.
Oh, already got a question, and this is the one I expected pretty much on Beer One, and I'm glad it showed up. When are you bringing back Labour Party?
We actually have some fun discussions coming up. We have a couple milestones to celebrate this year. In not the next release, but the following release will be Annex's 100th unique beer. So that's kind of cool. And then it's also the 4th anniversary coming up in May. So we were discussing fun ways to sort of celebrate either of those milestones, and it seems to be the anniversary beer now or the anniversary that's going to be celebrated in a way where we're going to bring back some favorites, some fan favorites. We're going to have like a way to vote on what your favorite beer of the past has been. So maybe you'll see Labor Days pop up there.
That'd be amazing. We were talking kind of before the stream that, you know, one of my favorite things that we tasted last year from Annex was the original Echoes New England IPA. But for like customer requests and like I think Labour Party was one of the beers that when we did our kind of top beers of the year, somebody said Labour Party, and then it was just everyone piling on, oh yeah, Labour Party was great. So around the brewery, what do you guys get requests for in terms of like what's the one beer you brewed a year ago and haven't thought about since, but every day you get somebody coming in and asking about it? Is there something like that?
I'd say Bright Nights. We probably get asked for a lot. That was the Sour Wit. Howling Fantods, but we just re-released that recently. That was one that, and then Pity Party as well. So those were two beers that we just re-released that everybody was really, really excited to see again.
And those were two beers we didn't quite have enough of to put on the table, because Howling Fantods would have cleaned us completely out of Howling Fantods, and I just didn't have enough Pity Party. I had like 1 4-pack of it left. So
yeah. No,
I'd love to have done one of those
very quickly. But yeah, I'd say, you know, Labor Party and Bright Nights definitely fan favorites.
Eric asks, why is this packing such a flavor wallet for a gateway beer? Is that
it's the Annex Way.
I'll actually contrast it. Like, is some of it the fact that compared to like a macro brewed lager, I'm guessing you guys don't use much, if any, adjuncts at all. I'd bet this is almost 100% barley and probably 100% like Canadian two-row, or a little bit of Pilsner malt in there probably.
I think you're right. I don't actually have that in front of me.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
But the difference in body between this and, say, a Bud Light, one of them is the fact you're not using any corn, you're not using any rice. It's when you make something 100% barley, it's a lot bigger beer in terms of the mouthfeel than it would be if you used adjuncts.
No, you're exactly right.
Ooh, here's a great one. Craig asks, how many unique beers do you brew in a year? Number of core beers versus specials. I think you guys are still sitting on 4 cores right now, aren't you?
Yeah. So our terminology, we have our core beers, and then we have our seasonal beer, which usually lasts 6 months. So that would be, right now it's Xenosign.
Yep.
That's a fall winter seasonal, and then we'll have a spring summer seasonal, and then we do small batch beers. Small batch beers, we usually seem to be putting out between 2-3 a month. Yeah, so quite a bit. I'm honestly, I was kind of surprised, like things move so quickly at the brewery. You don't even get to really celebrate the successes because you're already on to the next beer.
Oh, I know. Like we've got, we were talking about this before, but we're gonna have to talk about 3 upcoming tastings. I spent the whole afternoon filling little single bottles of mezcal. Our Scotch tasting last week was a massive hit, like way, way bigger, and we got about an hour afterwards to like celebrate that, and we're already like, all right, we need to order more little bottles and start filling little mezcals because it's just go, 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 isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, let's jump on to, I think, kind of the most interesting contrast of the night, the rinse cycle versus the forward progress. Now, is this an East Coast, West Coast comparison? Because you did say early on you were kind of a West Coast influenced brewery to begin, whereas the rinse cycle bills itself as a New England pale ale. Is the forward progress still very West Coast in style, or has the forward progress kind of shifted over the 4 years?
Well, it's kind of funny. I always wondered why we don't actually call Forward Progress a New England Pale Ale. To me, it sort of fits that style pretty well, but they just kind of want to call it a hazy American style Pale Ale.
Do they even go that far? I think it just says Pale Ale.
No, yeah, it just says Pale Ale on the can.
Yeah.
But I guess the way that we talk about it now, we call it a North American Pale Ale. But yeah, so rinse cycle, New England Pale Ale. And
that is, by the way, folks at home, that is what we're going to next, is the rinse cycle. Sorry, I wasn't desperately clear about that.
Yeah, so all our core beers came from Andrew, one of the founder of the brewery. This is interesting because it's one of the other brewers' recipe. Michael, and it's an attempt at subtlety, we'll call it.
It certainly succeeds in that, and that's. I realize that could have come off as a really backhanded compliment, but that is not at all how I meant it. Got a little bit of lag on the video here, Aaron, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I've lost Rupert. Well, I'm going to keep talking while we try to get Rupert back here. I think this is a really subtle, delicate expression of a New England pale, because I find so often, we got you back, I find so often they're so over the top and huge. This is so restrained and subtle and delicate. It's not trying to just blow you away with power. It's about balance.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, we lost you on the your feed lagged for a little bit, so I was just trying to fill time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
Did you catch that? It's our attempt at subtlety.
Yes, and that was as far as we got, and then the video died.
Yeah, so dry hop with Brew 1, Cryo Amarillo, hazy, and you get some melon, some pineapple. And what I really like about this beer is that it's got a really dry finish. And I honestly think it comes from using the same yeast as Force Majeure. So you might see some, that's one of our other core beers, the New England IPA. You might see some similarities there.
I'm surprised just how different this is and how much I like it. This was something where I was like, oh, and this is kind of the shame of it. I think the rinse cycle came in on a week where I was picking up just an absolute shitload of stuff. Like I had new stuff from 88, new stuff from Cabin, a bunch of new stuff from Establishment. It was like, oh, we also got a New England Pale Ale, and the rinse cycle kind of got missed because it was like, oh, it's a plain white can.
It must be like that for you every week, though.
It can be. This last week, actually, it was pretty. Well, yesterday, there was nothing from Annex because we had enough rinse cycle to get through the week. There was nothing new at 88. All Cabin, well, I shouldn't say there was nothing at Cabin. We got Rainbow Nation back, which was super nice of them. They always give us just a little bit of their New England Pale Ales that don't get a lot of distribution, so that was really nice of them. And then I had a ton at Establishment, including now that it's Wednesday, I can actually talk about it, the Cut the Cake Imperial Stout. So I was under very
Yeah,
strict
that's
orders not to talk about that.
Because they're celebrating their second anniversary.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's their anniversary brew. I think they might have been talking about maybe something in a bottle, but I don't know how much I'm allowed to say.
Yeah, I feel like they're probably putting out quite a few beers this week, to be honest. And they're our neighbors, so anytime I'm at the office, I can just pop over and get their new releases, which is super handy.
Have you guys only done the one collaboration? Because we had your Belgian things here in the shop for a little while. Is that the only Establishment Annex collab you guys have done?
As far as I know, yeah. Trying to think of just other collabs that we've done. Our first Foeder Age release, Bad Boy Club, that was with Two Crows from Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about doing some other collabs here and there, but I don't think there's anything planned right now.
Awesome. Having a lot of people really grooving on the pineapple here, Lorraine asks, how is the pineapple flavor coming to the fore? Is there do you want to talk a little bit about getting those fruit flavors into a New England Pale Ale? We actually haven't covered this in a few weeks, just because we've done so many New England Pale Ales that I'll be repeating myself. But let's talk a little bit about the fruitiness in how hops translate into the beer, and then just kind of New England Pale Ales in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, every hop obviously imparts certain flavors, and I believe Brew 1, you get a lot of pineapple from that, so that's where it's coming from in this beer.
Eric also loves your new white labels. Is that going to be something we see as a bog standard, like all your limited release stuff is all going to be in the white labels?
So this is, I think it's been 3 releases now, 4. For the small batch beers, we'll sort of all have this similar packaging, a similar label. And it's kind of fun in the 4-pack because what you would end up seeing would be that label, and I'm just going to use the retracted can, but side by side you'd kind of see that. If that makes sense to you?
We actually turn all our cans around so that they face like straight out, so
right,
which is really tedious. And no, Julie, I don't think we ever got the Two Crows collaboration with Annex. That might have ended up being brewery only, or that might have been before I actually was picking up beer at Annex. I've only been driving up to Calgary for about a year and a bit, so that was before that. I may not have actually been picking up. And actually, I don't think I was picking up at Annex until after I was picking up at Establishment, but before I was picking up at 88. So, yeah, I don't think I've been picking up from Annex for more than 9 months or so at this point. So
okay, because I remember hearing you say that you were just getting the bottles, and I was trying to think of how far back that goes. So that must have been obviously 9 months ago.
No, like I was thinking like way back in the day. Like, I mean, the 4-pack cans have been in Connect for well over a year now.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, no, I was thinking it was a lot more than 4 years ago. I feel like Annex has been around forever to a certain point.
I totally understand where you're coming from. I kind of think it's been a blur of the last 3 years or so. I was kind of looking back as to the first invoices that the Ship and Anchor had with Annex, and that goes back to 2017. And that's shocking to me. It feels so much longer than that.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah,
it really does. To think that the first time I had XPA was 2007, summer probably of 2017. That's crazy.
I got a really intelligent question here from Eric. How did a long distance collab with Two Crows work? Did they come to Annex and brew in your brew house, or how did that come about?
Yeah. I believe they came over. They brought some yeast, slapped it in the foeder, and we've been using that yeast. As you know, like foeders they're retaining the yeast that's in there. So, some people are like, oh, we'd love to see you make that beer again. Unfortunately, we can never actually make that beer again. It's an ever-changing thing. So, but Bad Boy Club was delicious. I do see some bottles of it around every now and again.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think we ever saw, because I think that was about 14 months ago-ish.
Yeah. So, actually, Etceteras, which I think you have, that would be from the same foeder. So there's some Two Crows yeast in that one.
Nice. While the rinse cycle is all fresh in our memories, let's jump straight into the forward progress, because they're very different beers from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, Julie, what I'm saying is that I'm now at Annex often enough that if they are generous enough to give it to me, I will not be in a position to say no, because I'll already be there, and it would just be socially awkward to say no.
What was that in reference to?
That we'd be getting all the small batch and collab beers. And, we don't get everything, even with breweries that we've been working with, like really hand in glove, which I think Annex is actually one at this point. I don't get everything. Let's take Establishment, which I think is the brewery I work the most closely with. Batch 1 of Tainted Love was Calgary only. It just wasn't coming down here. We ended up getting some kind of round the back way because they ran out of labels. They had 15 flats they didn't have labels for, and I got it a couple weeks later. But no, I mean, there's very often things that are taproom only or Calgary only, or there's an exclusive with a certain bar. So no, we're not going to get everything.
Kyle and I are on a texting relationship, though, so I do let him know of everything that's available to him.
I don't think I've said no to anything yet. Not known for saying no to beer.
Not in the 4 months that I've been dealing with you.
Okay, so forward progress. Let me tell a little bit of why I really like this. I mean, to me, it's just the alcohol's right on at 5.2 because, I do remember when everyone's IPA was 7+, but I don't really miss those days because A, I'm getting older, and B, I like a beer around 5.5, 6. The hopping is really nice. It's still got enough bitterness that it reminds me a little bit of a West Coast IPA. It's got the haziness, it's got the tropical fruit, but I can still pick out a lot of the classic West Coast notes that I really like grapefruit, a little tiny bit of pine drop in there. Even into some of those sprucey, juniper-y sorts of notes that I really, really groove on. This is, I know this is becoming a bit of a tired statement, but probably my favorite, all-the-time IPA that's always out is the Wave Pool from 88, because it combines kind of the best of the East Coast, best of the West Coast. I kind of feel like the Forward Progress does as well, and I'm just, as I talk my way through it, starting to realize I kind of like them for the same reasons. It gets me a little bit of both.
I totally see what you're saying with that. Pale ale, that really does sort of cover the spectrum. It's dry hopped with Citra and Mosaic. And the funny thing about Forward Progress was that it actually started as a summer seasonal.
Really?
I think it was under a different name at the time. And then it was just so popular, and I think everyone at the brewery was like, we have to make this full time. This is too good of a beer. I think they actually remade the seasonal, remade the seasonal as a small batch called Pretty Things just recently.
Yep.
So that would have been sort of the original recipe of Forward Progress, I believe.
Okay, and I liked Pretty Things, but I wasn't over the moon about it. I like the current version a lot more.
Yeah, so obviously things have been tweaked since then.
So the core range now is Force Majeure, Meets and Bounds, Good Authority, and Forward Progress. Is that wildly different from the launch core? What were the launch beers for Annex on day one?
I think it was XPA and Force Majeure. believe there was another beer that didn't stick around though, and I can't think of the name unfortunately. But that never saw.
I feel like
cans,
there was an amber,
sure.
like really early on or something.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like Annex.
I know, it doesn't sound like Annex at all, but I remember I know there was more than 2 beers at launch, and I cannot for the life of me think what the hell the other one was.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's so confusing because obviously all those labels are different when they were in bottles as to when they transferred over to cans. So, yeah. But, just a note about the style of this as well, and kind of like Annex's thinking when it comes to styles. They never really brew beers to fit the like BJCP guidelines, if that makes sense. Like they just kind of do their own thing, yeah. And I guess that's why they would never call it, like they're happy calling it a pale ale and nothing more.
And let's be fair, the difference between pale ale, IPA, and double IPA has gotten really squishy these days.
Exactly.
Although the style I really wish would come back is rye IPAs. I really liked Fresh, Hop Rod, and some of the others from like back when. I loved rye IPA. I used to go buy the Phillips Hop Box, and I'd dump out the 3 bottles of Skookum because they were just god-awful. But I'd literally buy the box. It was the only damn way I could get Krypton rye IPA, because I drank a ton of that back in the day.
That's funny. Yeah, no, you're right. You don't see rye IPAs at all anymore.
Which is a damn shame. And white IPA kind of went the way of the dinosaur as well, up to a point.
Really a fan? Yeah, to be fair, I was never really a fan, so I don't mind the fact that you don't see them as much anymore.
And yes, I know I'm aware that it is a dick move to ask the person who's been there 4 months about day one. I am well aware, everyone. Thank you for all your comments. Here's a question. Has the high density of brewers in Calgary affected the brewing choices that you make? Like, everybody's doing this. Is there a pressure to do one too? Or is it kind of the opposite, that now it's the, oh God, we have this in the tanks already and now everyone's beating us to market by a week?
That's exactly it. Definitely the latter there. Yeah, we're all excited about a beer that we've been planning for months, and everyone's like, between brewers, we don't really talk about what's coming out, in a couple weeks. And then it's obviously just coincidence. In the same week, we're all releasing the same style of beer. And
I think the one that was really obvious was the week that everybody came out with a pineapple beer, including you folks, and also the week that everyone came out with a Munich Dunkel. And those were both just this past summer. Because you guys and Snake Lake and somebody else came out with a Dunkel, I think, at the same time. It was just like Dunkels for days. And then, it was pineapple beers like a few weeks before that. Summer was interesting this year.
No, totally. I mean, that goes to speak to the trends that everyone's kind of paying attention to as well. And the fact that it's amazing that Alberta's in a place now where multiple breweries can put out a Dunkel and there's interest in them all. It's not necessarily a style that people, like even the Belgian Double, like I don't think that's necessarily a style that people would flock to.
No, not necessarily.
But it says a lot. Yeah, it says a lot about how far we've come, and just what people are willing to try these days.
Question from Chris Hunt. It's the BJCP, or Beer Judge Certification Program. They release a style guide, which is more or less like the definitive style guide on what beer styles are. If you enter a beer in a competition, it will very often judge to those styles specifically. So it's basically the closest thing we have to like a rules of brewing. But again, most brewers also, jump outside of those rules pretty darned quickly. Do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, I apologize. I should have explained that a little better. No, that's exactly it, and that's why a lot of breweries don't necessarily care that much, or at least they'll say they don't care about winning awards. I think the good breweries definitely want the freedom to do whatever they want, and they don't want to be hindered by adhering to guidelines.
You can feel free to say no comment on this, but I've heard it said that winning medals at beer awards isn't about brewing great beer, it's about coloring inside the lines.
Did you hear that in our tap room?
No, not from you.
No, that's a very, very accurate quote.
I don't know. I could just stay here and drink Forward Progress all bloody night, but we should probably just quickly jump along to Shameless Promotion Corner. I realize we're a little ahead of schedule, but you know what? I really view that as the fault of everyone at home not asking enough questions, and which is a way of deflecting it off me. Let's quickly talk about what we have coming up on Friday night. As we have discussed before, we are doing the best grape varieties you have never heard of. So we are going to be talking about 4 grape varieties that we don't see very darn often out there in the wine world. So no Cabernets or Chardonnays or Merlots. We're going to be doing a German Scheurebe, an Italian Gavi or Cortese. From France, we actually have a Mansoise, which is a grape variety I actually had to look up. And finally, from Italy, we have a very different bottle of wine here, a 1 liter that's, I'm hoping, very slightly sparkling, actually, made from Nero di Troia. So I don't know about what all of you are doing tomorrow night, but I'll be doing about 2.5 hours of research on, not so much on Cortese. I know Cortese reasonably well. I know Scheurebe fairly well. But even like the Jancis Robinson Oxford Companion to Wine has sweet FA to say about Mansoise and Nero de Troia, so that's going to be a little bit of work. 1 week from tonight, we're doing something a little bit different. We are doing a tasting in collaboration with the Southern Alberta Art Gallery, and rather than doing 2 different tastings, one and then the other, we're actually going to combine the 2. So from my side, we're going to be doing a tasting of the current seasonals lineup from Establishment Brewing. We're going to be doing the Cut the Cake Imperial Stout, the Tainted Love Cinnamon Ginger Rhubarb Sour, a beer I actually loved so much I bought a keg of it yesterday so that I could put it on our growler station, the Take 5 Belgian Pale Ale, and the Float Along New England Double IPA. Now from the SAG side, the tasting next week is not going to be $20, it's going to be $30 with a $10 donation to the SAG. But what they're kicking in is a stand-up comedian named Ferris Haitia, who is going to rip on me, rip on Aaron, not on the beers. He doesn't drink, so he's not going to have anything to really say about the beers, but he's also going to do a couple of pre-recorded stand-up sets based on some art at the SAG, and yeah, we're just going to do something a little bit different. So that's coming up a week from today. And then the one you all want me to talk about, what we're doing on Friday night next week. I teased it a little bit earlier today when I talked about the fact that we were filling little bottles of mezcal all bloody afternoon. We are doing it. We are doing our mezcal tasting. So we have a little bit of a fun lineup here. We have a silver tequila, just to get to talk about the difference between tequila and mezcal. 3 single varietal mezcals, because all tequila is made from blue agave or Weber blue agave if you want to be really specific. And then mezcal each comes from different types of agave. We're going to be tasting an Espadín, a Tabala, and a Madrigiche. And then, because mezcal is not obscure enough, and Devin and I really want to do this one, we're actually doing, that's the bloody mezcal. They're not in the right order in the thing. I should have done that first. We're actually doing a sotol, which actually is made in northern Mexico, up near the Chihuahua Desert, and it uses a plant in the same genus as agaves, but it's actually a completely different species and made in a slightly different way, and it's even more esoteric than mezcal. So, 5 bottles. It'll be $35 for the tasting, because there's a couple or $300 bottles in the lineup. Going to be a lot of fun. That is also one I'm going to have to do just a touch of research for. And that is our next 2 weeks covered. So yeah, let's let's jump back into it here and get into Retracted Resolutions Belgian Double. And I do see all your questions, by the way. We'll get to them after Rupert actually gets the introduction of Retracted Resolutions, because I do see we have a pile of questions.
Those tastings that you have coming up sound incredible.
I hope so. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no kidding. So Retracted Resolution, Belgian Double. Like I was saying earlier, small batch beers have started to come from, the recipes have started to come from other brewers. So this is Ewan's recipe. It's 7.7%. It has a West Abbey yeast, so you get some fruit esters and baking spice.
Just a touch of banana, just the tiniest
bit.
A
little bit, yeah. I kind of wish I got a bit more banana, to be honest.
Glass shape too, by the way. I mean, I've got this big silly thing. You've got something a little more reasonable.
Well, I had to use an Annex glass anyway. So
hey, I've got establishment glasses because they gave me establishment glasses. You want me to use an Annex glass on all my videos? Give me some damn glassware. I mean, it's pretty.
Hey, you were in town just yesterday. We could have met up.
We could have actually. That would have been fun.
So yeah, there's a malty sweetness. There's the use of Belgian candy syrup, and I believe like original doubles would have been made with like a Belgian candy, like a hard candy, sugar candy that was sort of melted down. So you get it's similar to molasses actually. The syrup that we end up using.
Are you guys going with the real thing, or are you doing the old homebrewer trick? Because I know every homebrewer I've ever met just uses like Rogers Dark corn syrup whenever they're called for dark candy sugar.
No, we actually acquired some Belgian candy syrup, but it's similar to molasses, a little bit sweeter even. So you get notes of plum, cherry, and then obviously toffee.
Yeah, the toffee's right there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting question from Eric. Gateway beers are educating customers. Does this mostly happen in the tap room? Do you think it's in-store tastings? Where do you take people across that threshold from like Bud or Bud Light drinker into the craft spectrum? What's your breaking point for people? I think probably more experience from the ship on this side than with Annex, I'd expect. I know how I've taken people over that line, but I want to hear your side.
That's a really good question. I found a lot of enjoyment working at the ship by exposing people to beers that they normally wouldn't have thought of drinking. I think beer in general is thought of in the majority as, this bitter liquid that doesn't have any different taste and styles. So when you can point out like a pineapple flavor in a beer, it can blow people's minds. And so, yeah, I used to have a lot of fun at the ship, just over the wood, showing people things and getting them excited about beer that they normally wouldn't have reached out for.
I think that's kind of the best part of us having the growler station is not so much the filling of growlers, which I don't think we're ever going to actually make enough money doing that to ever pay for that damn fridge unit. But two better things. A, I have draft beer at work, which is great when I got off work. And
dangerous.
B, damn dangerous, but damn good too. But B, it lets me, when somebody comes in and says, oh, well, I don't know, like the only IPA I've ever had is Alexander Keith's, and you're just kind of standing there biting your tongue, trying not to call them a bad word. And instead you walk them over and say, hey, we have, Tokyo Drift on tap right now. Let me pour you some of that and see how you feel about it.
Yep.
Just being able to walk people through that, and you have people that come in, we try to have something reasonably accessible like an amber or a brown, or right now we have Old Man River's Blind Canyon Blonde Ale on. We always try to have something like that, but when somebody comes in for that, they always want to try the rest of the draft ale because we offer like free one-ounce samples of everything up to a certain limit. And people come in and they want to try the other 5. I've had people come in and they're like, yep, I just want 2 growlers of the blonde, and then with the growler of the blonde, and then like, a barley wine sometimes. That happened last week. We actually have a 3-year-old keg that we aged in our warehouse of the Brewstars Blue Monk barley wine. Actually, it's now 4 because it's the 2017 release. And it's drinking like a hot damn. But yeah, somebody came in for 2 growlers of blonde, and they left with a growler of blonde and a growler of 4-year-old barley wine. So blow me over with a feather.
Barley wine.
Hey, I'm not going to pretend that that's a good idea, but you know.
Yeah, no, it's really fun, especially when you have those beers on tap. You know, the ship's got, I think it's close to 40 taps now. They just added some more, and you can just walk people down a series, tell them a story kind of thing. It's sad we don't really get to use the tap room right now, which should be reopening very shortly.
Yeah, you guys have a beautiful tap room, and one of the, I think of like the 4, I think, classic Calgary amazing craft breweries. You're really the only ones that have like a true food service to speak of. Yeah, Little Empire Burgers. That they sort of popped up when the expansion to our tap room took place. I think that was 2018. No, 2019. Yeah, and they're fantastic burgers. Just heard 88 is losing Noble Pie. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think on Monday I saw that come down. Yeah.
Yeah, but good for Noble Pie. Best pizza in the city. They're getting their own brick and mortar place, I believe. So yeah, good for them. But yeah, in terms of like using the tap room as a tool, it's really important. We love having meetings there. We love having people over and having beers with them, and exactly like telling the story. We have 8, 9 Annex beers on at a time. You can really get the full experience that way.
Awesome. Just going to burn through some questions here. Trevor, is the keg of Tainted Love ready now? No, not yet. I'm waiting for one of our 6 lines to kick. So I think that blonde ale keg's just about on its last couple of growlers in it. I think that'll be the next thing to go. If not that, then it's the Bent Stick 4:30 p.m. stout. So we will definitely be getting that on the next couple of weeks. It just snowed today, so that's going to definitely slow down growler sales. Growlers do not sell very well when it's cold. But we will, as soon as we have something die, that is the next thing on. John's in for 3 sets of mezcal. Thank you, John. And yeah, Craig's straight in for the tastings as well. And yeah, we went right to Sotol. You're right, Deanne. It's a little wild. The chats are going to be off the rails. They always are, though. And yeah, we were, Eric actually came in while we were pouring, which was fun. And yeah, it is not the world's most technologically savvy thing. It's 2 measuring cups, 2 shot glasses, 2 funnels, and that's literally how we do it, one at a time. And yeah, just message us for the mezcal orders exactly. Banana Runts is a good comment on this. I agree. Are they using a Hefeweizen yeast to get the banana flavor? No. Westmalle yeast or West Abbey yeast can also pull that out depending on exactly what temperature you ferment it at. I'm just going to pull this out of the back of my head here. I think if you ferment West Abbey fairly hot, it comes off more peppery like Roquefort, or if you ferment it slightly colder, it comes off more banana-y like Westmalle. I might have that backwards though.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about maybe like the original examples of a double. I didn't want to talk about something that wasn't necessarily available. Maybe you could speak to that, whether it's like a Westmalle or a Chimay Red.
No, we carry basically all the classic Trappist stuff, and we are well into get wildly off topic on tangents mode. So we got through the 4 beers. We talked about the tastings next week. Our job's basically done. We can just talk about anything at this point for the next 15. So we're good. Go right on and talk about some Trappist. Let's do this thing.
Well, no, I just wanted to know sort of where you would go with that.
In terms of this versus a Trappist? Well, I already like it better than Chimay Red. Okay, I don't like Chimay, and I never have. I don't even like Chimay Blue. I think they're the worst of the Trappist breweries. I think in terms of all the classic Trappist, this probably reminds me the most of like Roquefort 6. It's a little bit pale for a double. Like this is not as dark as like Westmalle Double. It's not as dark as Roquefort 8. It's not as dark as the Trap. I did buy one of those 4-packs of West Valetron when they came through the market, but I can't say I'm an expert on West E12. I've had it half dozen times at most.
Sure.
And it's fine. Best beer in the world, my ass, though. But yeah, I mean, in style, it probably reminds me most of Roquefort 6 with a little less pepper and spice and maybe a little more banana and sweetness. I think for those people who are saying, hey, this kind of comes off a little more German, I don't think they're wrong. I think this definitely has a Belgian double with a strong nod towards like German Munich Dunkel, or even into like the Aventinus Doppelweizenbock. I think there's some notes in common there, although again, not as cereal as a Weizenbock. No, I dig this. This is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and again, it's an attempt by a brewery that isn't known for doing anything like this. So, yeah, it's just kind of fun to see Annex go out on a limb and do something different. Something with a lot of history too, so you can obviously compare it to a million, well, maybe not a million, but a lot of other examples of exactly what the style is supposed to be. So if you are in Lethbridge and you're going to pick up a can of Retracted Resolution from Andrew Hilton, you can pick up something else that they have to compare it to. Yeah,
lots of different things that are in this style. I have a question that actually came in that I didn't think to ask, so thank you, Julie, because I should have asked this. Where's the name of brewery come from? Where's Annex come from?
That is an excellent question, and I have no idea.
I think Julie's even one of the people who gave me trouble for like giving the guy who'd been there 4 months what were the 4 core launch beers, and now Julie comes full around again, and this one's on her.
That's so funny. There's probably, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I never thought to ask.
No, that's totally fair.
Yeah, I was just always, like I said, for the last 3.5 years, just thought of Annex as another Calgary brewery putting out fantastic beer, and I never thought too much about the name.
No, I know. Like, really, I've slowly had to kind of. I used to say, okay, let's go back quite a ways. You know, when Blind Man launched, there was everything else that was happening in Alberta, and then Blind Man. And slowly we have this kind of first tier of Alberta beers. I'm about to make a lot of enemies because I'm going to leave some people out of it.
Well, let me just say I don't think we're named after a river.
That's fair.
I can say that much.
That is very fair. Perfectly reasonable. I think the only beer that was brewed in Calgary named for like Bow Valley was like the Bow Valley Gold from Big Rock, which is, oh God, help us. Anyway, but no, I mean, my top tier would be Blind Man and Snake Lake are right there from outside Calgary, SYC in Edmonton, and then it's kind of the 4 in Calgary of Annex Cabin Establishment and 88. I haven't had enough from Outcast, and I keep being told by people I respect I need to drink more Outcast. And spoiler warning, not next week, which is the SAG event with Establishment. The week after is going to be Outcast. We're all going to learn more about it together. But yeah, is there anybody else you'd put in that top tier for your breweries of Alberta? Maybe a dark horse that most people wouldn't think of?
I mean, Blind Enthusiasm, obviously. I think they're putting out really interesting stuff. The whole Monolith program that they have.
Yeah, which unfortunately doesn't find its way this far south. I'd have to drive to Edmonton to get it.
Yeah.
And I will drive to Calgary, but Edmonton's a brutal and ugly drive.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, luckily enough, I get to go up to Edmonton for work now, so I get to stop by there. I think what else I've had. Obviously, you asked me that question, my mind goes blank. Funnily enough, some really good sour beers from Campio that probably don't make it outside the tap room. Yeah, I don't know. obviously very lucky to be next to Establishment. Those guys are doing exactly the style of beer that I'm really into right now with their barrel age program. Yeah, I don't know. There's so much good beer in Alberta right now. Can you think of any others?
No, I mean there are occasional ones where, I really liked the Beet Sour by Town Square. I thought that was really cool, and yet the rest of their stuff's been fine. The same with Situation. Like every now and again, I'll have something in a Situation where it's like, wow, this is really great, and I'll buy a couple more Situations. Like, cool. Dandy, I don't know. I think that whoever has the palate at Dandy that chooses what they do, and myself just personally have very different palates in terms of beer. I know a lot of people who I respect greatly who think Dandy's like absolutely right there at that bleeding edge. I just, it doesn't do anything for me personally.
I think, Dandy has some fantastic small batch releases.
And the issue may be that we never see them down here, and it's Calgary only.
Yeah, it's very possible. I don't think they go out too far. But their core. It's kind of funny when you step away from the core beers, because obviously core beers are supposed to be a representation of what the brewery is, what it stands for, kind of thing. And then the small batches where they have fun and they experiment and here for a good time, not a long time. But I think that's really, if you're able to ever delve into what a brewery is trying to achieve, that's small batches where it's at.
Also, I got a comment on Kevin's rankings here. Like, Kevin coming in like way out of left field and putting the Good Authority as his favorite beer of the night.
Okay.
I mean, I don't disagree. Okay, when you see my rankings, I will clearly disagree. But I gotta say, like, picking that number one, I completely understand why you would. That's, again, this is going to be a BJCP thing, but if we're just picking that in like the style of Golden Ale, that absolutely nails it. You're absolutely right. Well, probably doesn't by BJCP because it's probably too hoppy, but whatever. Screw the BJCP.
Yeah, that's right. Good Authority is the beer that I want to drink on a golf course.
Yeah. Good Authority, honestly, like, that's something that I would feel really happy, and I've talked about this before, like, I've really come around on these more subtle styles of beer because I was just the most hopeless IPA drinker. Oh, it's on an IPA? Oh, I'm not interested. Jog on. Like, no, I was awful. Just running through the ratings here, like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. Interesting one from Eric again. Eric's on fire tonight, by the way. Given it's different from previous offerings, what got the Annex Brewers making the Retracted? Or is it, you said this was a different kind of a brewer at Annex than the others. This was Ewan or Evan?
Ewan, yeah.
Yeah, and is it just his background? He likes more malt-forward stuff? What's the story on that?
I think it's just, as a brewery, we're trying to attempt different styles. And he took this one on. So he wrote up the recipe and kind of went from there. The brewers seem to have a lot of freedom when it comes to coming up with recipes and suggesting things. So yeah, I think it's conducive to just being very creative back there. I say back there in the brewery. They have a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Yeah, Kevin's he's doubling down on the Good Authority. He's never had a better gold, and he usually dreads that adjective. So, yeah, there's a lot of love for the Good Authority. And I'll be honest, I would never have done the Good Authority in this. If this was week one, we were rolling out with Annex, you'd probably be like, hey, Kyle. Well, you weren't here when we did week one, but let's just pretend you were. If you say, oh, Kyle, we should do the Good Authority. It's great for Golden Ale. I'm like, that's nice, Rupert. Just, maybe we won't do you as a guest if you really like it that much. We'll just do the force majeure and you can shut up. But no, I'm really glad we did it because it's opened some eyes, my own included. So yeah, this I think is great.
I think it's fair to say that Golden Ale is maybe like a a more boring style, and then Annex does its thing and then puts a twist on it. So.
A couple of related questions. Do you do small pilot batches? And what for you is considered a small batch? What's your small, like, do you have two systems, or does everything come off the main system?
So there's a 20 and a 30 hec batch system. So when I say small batch, it means just either 20 or 30, depending on what it is. Obviously lately, everything's getting canned. Nothing has really been going into kegs. So there's, for the first time ever, actually, Rinse Cycle was the first small batch beer to go up to Connect. I know, Kyle, you briefly described what Connect is to those that don't know last week.
And don't be afraid to go off. Like, we get different audience. Like, we have, a few core diehards. We get a few core diehards, several core diehards, but we do get a slightly different audience every week. So there's probably 6 or 8 people who didn't hear last week's talk about what Connect is. So go right ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So Connect is the government agency that, or the government warehouse where they distribute beer throughout the province. And as you mentioned, all for the same price. So if you are 5 feet out the door of the Connect warehouse, or if you are 400 kilometers south, you get the beer at the same price. What you didn't mention, though, is that the minimum order is 25 flats or 25 kegs. So that can be a lot for smaller bars, restaurants, even liquor stores.
Which is why we do wholesale, is we can split out into individual bottles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's literally, well, it's not a side of our business these days, but historically it's been a big part of our business is, if you don't want a case of blue Curacao, because who the hell wants a case of blue Curacao? I don't want a case of blue Curacao. We'll sell you a bottle at a time at a slight markup. Yeah, there's a whole side business for the store of doing exactly that.
Yeah. No, exactly. So we obviously we had more canned product lately. So we thought we would send some up to Connect and see what happens. And there are some places that we obviously can't deliver directly to because we just have one delivery guy and one van, and doesn't make a lot of sense for him to drive up to Fort McMurray, just to drop off a couple flats. So this is the opportunity for them to finally see what Annex is doing outside of the core beers.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, one, Devin, I think you would particularly like the Good Authority. It's bone dry, it's got beautiful citrus notes from the hops, and it's really, really clean. This seems like a beer that's exactly up your alley. But second, I think unless we had something really fascinating coming in for a question here, I think we're just about done. Rupert, thank you so much for doing this. I know you were really nervous. Did it go as badly as you thought it might?
No, I honestly, if we do this again in a year's time, maybe I'll know a bit more about the history of the brewery and things like that, but that'll come. So
see you next month then.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rupert. I'll ask you to stick around. We'll just kind of debrief after we wrap up the video here. And I'll say goodnight to all of you as well. This has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I am, to a certain point, making up for things that I didn't think I did quite as well as I could have in 2020. One of which was the Annex tasting. One of which was the East Coast versus West Coast IPA tastings. There's a couple others that I will get to in time, but these were the two that really bugged me. In terms of beer tastings, I have already said that we have Establishment next week with our stand-up comedian. The week after, we have Outcast, including a special guest. I think, actually, if we include the comedian, our next 5 beer tastings all have a special guest. So it's going to be a really, really strong lineup for the rest of February and the first half of March. So it's going to be a lot of fun, folks. I can't wait to see out for that. But for Andrew Hilton, I'm Kyle. This was the always wonderful Aaron down here on the computer, and this has been Rupert. So thank you all very much for watching, and have a good night.